You know, when you hear the phrase one-room schoolhouse, you're probably picturing something straight out of a history book, right? But what if I told you that this model isn't just alive and well, it's absolutely essential for millions of students all over the world today? And that brings up a really fascinating problem.
Okay, let's just dive right into the heart of it. How on earth does a single teacher manage a classroom packed with kids at totally different learning levels? I mean, it sounds kind of impossible, but the answer is a system known as multigrade teaching.
So to be clear, a multigrade class isn't just, a random jumble of students. It's actually a pretty structured environment where one teacher is guiding multiple grade levels all at the same time. And this is happening all over the globe, but it's not usually a choice. Far more often, it's a system that's born purely out of necessity.
To really get our heads around this, we need to look at why these schools are so common in the first place. And it really boils down to a few key reasons that make those traditional single-grade schools you're used to, well, totally impractical, or sometimes even impossible.
First up, and maybe the most obvious reason, is geography. The physical world itself, the mountains, the rivers, the sheer distance, often demands a multigrade classroom. I mean, just picture it. Imagine you live in a tiny, isolated village with just a handful of kids. Or maybe you're part of a nomadic community, always moving. What if there's a huge mountain range or a dangerous river between you and the nearest big school? In every single one of these cases, a small, local, multigrade school is pretty much the only option.
Okay, next, let's talk about the economic reality. Because for a lot of communities and even entire countries, it really just comes down to a simple lack of resources.
Yeah, the math here is pretty straightforward. It just doesn't make financial sense to hire, say, 7 different teachers for a school that only has 30 kids total. Very few countries have the budget to pay a full-time teacher for a class of just 3 or 4 students. This shortage of resources, both people and materials, makes multigrade teaching an economic necessity.
But it's not all about logistics and money. There's also this really powerful force of culture and community identity that comes into play.
Just try to see it from a parent's point of view. Sending your kid away to a school in a different town might mean they get influenced by a totally different culture. Or, maybe they'll get drawn to city life and never want to come back home. For a lot of people, having a small school right there in the community is the absolute best way to educate their kids while holding on to their unique traditions and values. And last but not least, you've got politics and governance, which can create boundaries you can see and some that you can't. A lot of these schools are in these remote spots, sometimes right up against the national border. A bigger, better resource school might be just a mile down the road, but if it's in another country, well, students can't cross. At the same time, you'll often have local leaders pushing hard for a school in their own area, no matter how small, because it's a sign of pride and development for their community.
So, okay, we've established that multi-grade schools are often a solution born from necessity. But this is where the story gets really interesting. It turns out this model, which comes from all these constraints, can actually lead to some incredible and kind of unexpected benefits.
You'd think this would be a disadvantage, right? But actually, this mixed-age environment can be a huge social advantage. It creates this kind of family-like atmosphere where students are constantly learning how to interact with a wider range of people, and they end up developing these crucial life skills along the way. And here, you can really see what those skills are. Students have to learn to be more independent because the teacher simply can't be with every single person at once. The older kids naturally step up and become mentors and leaders, and everyone learns these vital social skills, like how to cooperate and share in small groups. Plus, and this is a big one, this setup allows kids to learn at their own speed, so they can jump ahead if they're ready or get some extra help if they need it.
This is honestly one of the coolest parts. Think about it. When a teacher is explaining a concept to the 3rd graders, the 2nd graders are listening in, getting a sneak peek, that's the pre-teaching, and the 4th graders, they're hearing it all over again, which reinforces what they've already learned. That's reteaching. It's this constant, natural cycle of learning.
Okay, but let's not get carried away. We have to be realistic here. While those benefits are amazing, this model comes with a huge set of real-world challenges, especially for the teachers and the education systems that are supposed to be supporting them.
And this slide really paints the picture, doesn't it? On one side, you have these fantastic outcomes for the students. But on the other, you have a system that is often completely unprepared to help the teachers who make it all possible. It's a really stark contrast.
So what this really points to is a systemic issue.
The textbooks are all designed for single-grade classrooms. Resources are often incredibly scarce. And maybe most importantly, teacher training colleges usually don't prepare educators for this kind of environment. So often, these teachers are just thrown into the deep end with very little support. But even with all of those challenges, the multigrade school isn't just a workaround for remote areas. It's a vital part of its community. And honestly, it holds some pretty important lessons for all of us. And at the end of the day, this is why it all matters so much. These schools are engines of opportunity. They raise the basic levels of reading, writing, and math for the entire community. They give kids a real shot at moving on to higher education, creating choices for their future that just wouldn't have been there otherwise.
So, I'll just leave you with this thought. In our modern world, we're constantly talking about how important skills like collaboration, independence, and self-directed learning are. Well, it turns out the humble one-room schoolhouse, born out of pure necessity, has been teaching these exact skills all along. It really makes you wonder, what else can it teach us?